Are you an overwhelmed SaaS founder ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those you don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where founders say they want funding, but keep mixing personal and business finances like it's a smoothie, and then wonder why everything tastes like debt. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to massive scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Why does it feel like no matter how much capital you bring into the business, it's never quite enough? Anybody else experience that? Revenue comes in, you get a new round of funding, and somehow a few months later, you're right back in the same financial pressure cycle. And it doesn't matter, it can be millions and millions, or it can be little. Every company deals with the same thing. And today, we're going to unpack one of the most underlooked levers for sustainable growth: building real business credit and managing debt strategically. You'll hear why relying on personal credit quietly limits your scale, exposes your assets, and keeps you playing smaller than you need to, and how creating separate financial identity for your business changes the game entirely. We'll also dig into the trap many founders fall into, and that is treating funding as the solution instead of fixing the system. From smarter ways to leverage vendor credit to building payment history that unlocks larger opportunities, this conversation is designed to reframe how capital should actually work for you. And perhaps most importantly, we'll explore how to break the debt cycle altogether by thinking beyond loans and building additional revenue streams that give your business stability and lots of breathing room to grow. If you're tired of chasing cash flow, juggling financial stress, chasing the next round of funding, and then wondering where the money keeps going, this episode offers a practical path towards stronger financial control and long-term stability. Let's dive in. Our founder on Tuesday was Ben Perot, founder of Parafoil. He challenged how we think about leadership in today's world. We talked about why most managers are overwhelmed, how leadership challenges are fundamentally human, and why measuring behaviors, not just outcomes, is the key to real improvement. Ben also shared how AI can reduce the cognitive load on managers so they focus on what actually matters: judgment, empathy, and connection. And our expert guest last week was Jim Effner, founder of the P2P Group. He broke down what separates elite sales performers from everybody else. We explored the power of belief systems, why confidence can be built, and how structured systems, not just winging it, create consistent, predictable results under pressure. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and check it out. Lots of gold in both of them. My guest today is Jimmy Rios, a financial strategist and entrepreneur with 25 years helping business owners not just get funding, but actually use it the right way. Jimmy has worked across every angle of finance, from underwriting to real estate to business funding, and he's seen the same pattern play out over and over again. Founders chasing money without building the financial foundation to sustain it. So if you've ever felt like money is moving through your business faster than you can control it, this conversation will change how you think about capital entirely. Welcome, Jimmy Rios. Hey, Jimmy, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Hey, how you doing, Jeff?
Fantastic. How about you?
Doing good, man. Can't
All
complain.
right. Well, you've been helping entrepreneurs for over 2 decades. What was the original problem or pain point that led you to launch Rios Business Advisors?
Well, it was observation over 20 years that led me to experience the problem that many have, right? So as an entrepreneur myself, I saw that, I was always running into the need for capital, right? But getting capital for capital's sake wasn't the problem. The problem was that I would get the capital, and then 6 months later, it seemed like, where'd the money go? And here I am again. All these things that needed to happen haven't happened. And all of a sudden there's a pandemic, or, something in the winds of change of the world happens, a war or whatever. And all of a sudden now my business needs more money, more capital. So it felt like Like there had to be a better solution, and maybe, better guidance, better mentorship, better ability to see further out than just in giving somebody money, and checking that box off, which I was doing as a broker in helping individuals with that individual need. But as my business grew and I started seeing that for me to grow my business and scale, I needed to do more things. Now I put on that hat as kind of like the architect, and in devising a plan of attack to be able to, and yes, that plan of attack, that blueprint was going to cost, it was going to need a lot of money to implement and bring down the barriers of entry for some of these things that my business needed. But if I didn't know what that was from the get go, like how, or better yet, if I would have known what that was from the get go, how much further along could I have gotten to withstand a lot of these challenges that we go through as entrepreneurs? If I didn't bootstrap and do everything the way I thought was the route, how much time could I have saved? And so that kind of lit that bulb in my mind saying, whoa, I got something here that could help a lot of people. And it didn't really take off in the way that I wanted until I built the eye level to high level program. Now, once we did that, it it really made every sense to what I was talking about, right? In how to help alleviate the burden of debt while building your business and still checking the box for all the things the business needs through that blueprint that they need. So that in a nutshell is what we created over.
Love it. And that is a big focus of yours is helping businesses eliminate debt and build credit. What makes your approach different from traditional funding or financial
Yeah,
advising?
totally. Well, that was the thing, was that, it was like I was in the game for a long time, and it's like, wait a minute, if I'm in the game and I know the rules of the game, how come I'm having trouble, right? So if I'm in the game and I know the rules and I'm having trouble, how many more people are out there that don't have the blessings that I do and are probably even worse, right? So the differentiator for what we did was building a third arm of income stream of money coming in, to be able to alleviate the burden of debt while I could focus on building the business and doing the things that need to be done without having to worry about the exact debt load or debt constraints that my business had, because taking money is easy to do, right? It's the
Sure.
after effect that's hard, is building in the infrastructure of paybacks and how soon can that happen, right? So if I can take care of this side by having that third income stream coming in for my business as a sweeper to be able to pay off this debt in a fraction of the time than a traditional loan would take, now I have done two things. My balance sheet looks a lot better, right? I've built credit systems inside my business that are able to be utilized as needed. So I'm not constantly having to go and spend all this money trying to get more loans through other channels. I build lines of credit and credit systems inside my business that I can tap into as needed, so that the knot never forms. It's always cash flowing, right? Your business is doing what it's supposed to. And when I need to hire more people, I can tap into that resource to do it, very much like high level finance is done, right? When you talk about high level finance and the businesses and M&As and how they go about putting these things together, when a business goes through a merger and an acquisition, many of the businesses that, or family offices or companies that buy these businesses, they're looking to take that business and look at the mechanics of what's going on with that business and fix it and start putting things in place to raise the value of that corporation so it starts producing at an optimal level. That's high level finance at its best. They're very conscientious of debt and how to go about spending their money, but they're also very good at generating money, right? Like Amazon doesn't just sit and make money from selling products. They have AWS and they have all these different services that come in as third arms of income to stabilize their operations so they can do the things that are needed to be done.
Right.
So I just took a page from the book of insurance companies, banks, And I said, wait a minute, if these guys are doing it at the high level, what keeps us at the eye level from being able to partake even in a fraction of what they're doing? Right? I mean, there's nothing. We're in the best country in the world with the freedoms that no other country can give. And I tell you this wholeheartedly because I just opened the doors in Medellin, Colombia, and to do a simple remitly, which is a transfer from the U.S. business to Colombia, I can't. I have to like go through all kinds of red tape. And it
Right.
was like, what? Like, it's ridiculous. So I'm going to be able to facilitate through my experience, and I'm doing it now, abilities to help individuals get to that higher level, that echelon, the Kiyosaki principles that we talk about or hear or read in the cash flow quadrant, to have these pipelines of cash coming through and help you do the things you need to do. And we don't have to complicate it, because that's the problem, is that things get so complicated out there that people say, nope, I don't want to do it. It's too complicated. It's above my wheelhouse. I just can't do it. And
Right.
we want to demystify, decode those mysteries, and make things more achievable for everyone.
Love it. And one of the things that you mentioned was business credit, and business credit
Yep.
offers significantly more leverage than personal. Why do so many founders miss that? And how do you help
Yeah.
them bridge that gap?
So one of the things I did was I wrote a book called Decoding the Mystery of Business Credit. It's on Amazon, and it's a very good simplistic book to really understand the steps. I took my concepts, my ideas, and my tutelage in helping people, and I said, well, sometimes people are of the mindset that I'll do it myself. Well, that's fine. If you need and you want to do it yourself, you can definitely do that. And I facilitate through that book the ability to do it yourself. It's not that you can't do it yourself. The problem is that, like many of us, right, Jeff, have you ever undertook the challenge of losing weight? Right? Have you ever said, I'm gonna lose 20 pounds?
Of
It
course.
wasn't the problem wasn't that you didn't know what you needed to do, right? You knew that you needed to lose 20 pounds, but how do you go about doing that? The consistency in your workouts, in your diet, in proper training consistently over time is what's going to start showing the progress to getting to that goal of losing 20 pounds. Well, why is it any different with business credit? If you don't start because you don't have the knowledge, you have to acquire the knowledge to just do the menial basic steps of being able to get business credit. What is that? Well, you need to have a DUNS number, you have to have an LLC, you have to have an EIN, you have to have these steps, right? So it just doesn't come like without doing some work. There's going to be some work to be done and to do it right, right? So I plant the seeds of understanding, but if you choose that, well, you know how many people I have a ton of books, and many of the books I have, I still haven't read. I love reading though, and I have audibles, and it's only as good as what you do in picking up the book and reading it or doing it. If you don't do that, then you need to get help. You need to ask somebody, right, in an organization that understands business credit. And if you have to pay for the service, do it rather than not, because it's going to cost you in opportunity cost over time 10 times more money by not making those actions and building credit for your business. It's such a substantial part. It should be looked at as almost no different than when they say, okay, I'm going to build an LLC, and they say, okay, well, you need to go open a business bank account. You need an EIN number. Those are two important things. Well, I put this up there with the things to do list. If you have to have a checklist, that should be on there. And many don't. Many, if you survey 100 business owners, I'm very willing to say that about 95%, if they have any type of credit with their business name on it, they're personally guaranteeing the debt with their
Right.
personal credit, right? So many of them don't do it where there is no PGs, where they've really took the liability away from themselves, which is what a limited liability company is supposed to do, right? But if something were to happen and you personally guarantee this debt, guess what? You're liable for it, right? and they
Right.
can come after you. So that's another distinction of what business credit should be done and how it should be created in helping you alleviate the liability side of the business, because there's so many variables that you can't control for your business. If the business has to fold or go bankrupt or whatever, or you have to sell, you don't want to personally be liable for that. It has to sit on its own 2 feet as its own entity that it was meant to be.
That makes sense. If a business owner, founder, they want to start establishing business credit, what are maybe the first few steps that they need to take in order to
Definitely.
start doing that and get away from the PG and actually make a
Yes.
true business?
Well, and to that point, you're gonna probably have to cross the bridge in personally guaranteeing credit beginning,
Makes
because
sense.
you might not have the financials, or you might not have all the acumen as a business owner to stand on your own 2 feet. So just like when we co-sign for our kids, we're co-signing basically for our business in being able to get credit. But doing something as simplistic as getting a gas card at a Circle K or QT under the business doesn't take much to get done. Yet we need gas every time we go fill up, and it's an easy way to start building business credit without,
Interesting.
in the traditional mindset that you think, well, I need, I need a Visa that has American Express Black or whatever. No, let's start thinking of, like, take an inventory of what your business does and start thinking, well, how could I creditize this need? Meaning, let's say I run a business and I order a lot of supplies on Amazon, right? Well, look into the Amazon card and get yourself a business card to put those Amazon expenses, right? Walmart, right? How many times do we go to Walmart and buy supplies from Walmart, Office Depot? There's different companies that we can get credit from, yet we don't think like that. We don't think that all those expenses, not only can it benefit your business by having the itemization on your books, but now you're building credit. And ultimately, you can get away from the PG once you have about 6 months of credit history. But there's also like simple things like net 30 accounts. These are companies that will extend credit for 30 days, right? It doesn't sound like much, but how many times have we bought, for example, business cards and we didn't think about expensing it in that way? Well, business credit, if you can show the ability to pay back an invoice in a shorter period of time, if I give you 30 days and you do it in 15 days, well, your score is going to start tracking, your business scores are going to start tracking, and the ability to pay quicker is very good and gets highlighted. And so you'll start building credit with net 30, net 60, net 90 accounts, 30, 60, 90-day accounts, right? Where you can start showing what your business does. And we see it a lot with contractors when they go to, like, different stores that offer, these net accounts. Ask for it. Ask if they extend credit to business. And many times they do. And people just don't know that they offer that.
Interesting. It's not something I thought about.
No,
How do
people
you
don't.
know which vendors or merchants are actually reporting that, for actually doing the credit reporting so that it helps your score and then
Yeah.
you're able to do more? How do you even know?
So they've invented this great tool that I use almost every day now called ChatGPT.
Ah,
But let me tell you why that's so important. Because Chat gives you the ability to see further than just one source, right? Google will look in certain areas. Bing, all these search engines will look in certain areas. Well, Chat and these AI powerhouses are starting to go further wide. And so if I ask Chat, give me the top 10, well, let me do it right now. Give me the top 10 net 30 business accounts and who they report to
hmm,
build business credit. So I could put a prompt as simple as that, and inside of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, here it goes. It starts getting out. It gave me the list, right? So right away it tells you Quill, Granger, they report to DMB, Experian plus DMB, Experian. So now Equifax. So now I have 10 business
Ah,
companies that I can office supplies, marketing services, business plans, software and tech, tools, equipment and maintenance, packaging, shipping supplies, right? How many of those can you use, right? Inside of those topics, right? And now you start building this funnel and you start getting very finite. And that I did in a matter of 10 seconds, right?
yeah.
That's what that's what took me years to do can be done now in 10 seconds. Just took
That
away
is
my
pretty
job.
amazing. Very, very simple. And thinking about,
Extremely simple.
what it is that you do just on a daily basis, and if you can find a vendor like that and start working with them, now you're building that up. And did this with another business and more in the kind of the retail wholesale sale manufacturing space, was able to get a
Right,
credit line with one supplier and then leverage
right.
that into a bigger one with another one, leverage that into a bigger one with another one. And it just started to snowball because they're like, oh, if they gave you that much, we're going to give you more because we want all your business. And then,
Yeah.
oh, we want all that business.
And that's the thing with business credit. Usually, if you have an extension of credit on personal, let's say of 10,000, with business credit, I can usually get about 10 times that, right? So you can use your bridge of personal credit to help you get really bigger lines of credit down the road. And let me tell you, when the opportunity knocks, let's say you make t-shirts, right? And all of a sudden you make this design and you get an order in for 25,000 t-shirts or something, right? If you didn't have the ability through credit, how are you going to be able to finance this process? Because you're not getting paid right away. You might get a percentage of that order and then the rest when it's completed and shipped out or whatever.
Right.
So how many businesses work in that fashion? Like I work in real estate a lot and I talk to a lot of fix and flippers and different, people in construction services that come across that problem all the time. They're able to get some form of money and hard money or whatnot to buy a house, but then they need to be able to put into that house to do the things they need, and they're not going to see any money on the sale for 90 days or 120 days. So how do you extend yourself for that period of time? When you get paid, you're going to be able to pay off everything and you'll be great. But in the interim, right, that opportunity could have just sailed away because you couldn't fill the holes, right? And that's where bridge funding, gap funding, all these fundings that we talk about come into play. And that's why we developed Rios Business Funding, right? riosbusinessfunding.com is our funding vertical because we saw that a lot of these people, though I give you in 10 seconds the ability to do things, you don't do it, then we built a program around helping businesses to achieve through different steps in our process so that we know for a fact it's going to get done and you're going to get approved and you're going to get the necessary things you need. So we just extended it. We just took an extension of the thought process and moved it up a notch and said, look, if you don't want to do it yourself, let us do it for you.
Makes sense. I think that's really practical just to be able to get a list because there are a lot of places. You're right. We don't even ask that probably do offer some sort of terms, but just because they
Right?
offer net 30 doesn't mean they report consistently enough to build credit or to matter. And so having those
Exactly.
two, the intersection of those two things is really really helpful to think about that, and then how to
Right.
take that and then leverage that into the next
Yep.
deal.
Exactly.
Ever notice how every leadership book tells you to take the journey, but none really show you the map? Well, after scaling multiple companies to over 260 million in combined revenue and working with over 1,000 leaders, I discovered the key difference that separates leaders who burn out from those who build unstoppable momentum. It's not strategy, not charisma, it's not even luck. It's relationships, specifically four of them. My new book, The Captain's Keys, reveals the stability matrix, a proven system that transforms leadership from survival into sustainable success. Inside, you'll discover the four critical relationships every leader needs and exactly how to build them. You can get your copy at thecaptainskeys.com, Amazon, or your favorite bookstore, and it's available in print, ebook, and audio. You don't need another playbook, you just need the right people in your boat. Well, you built a company around real life case studies, and you talked about that even with the funding aspect of it. What is a moment where everything clicked, and you're like, the method, turn around a business that others had given up on. And you're like, this is
Yeah,
definitely the way.
I think I came to a realization. I would say probably not too long ago. It was probably about 4 years ago. My back was against the wall, so I ended up having to go back to corporate and business afloat. But I had to go back and go back to the banking industry, and I was working from home, and an epiphany went off, and I was like, there's no way that I can work 40, 50 hours underwriting and then take off that hat and still manage what I'm doing in my business model, because there's just no way. There's only so many hours in the day. So that forced me to start thinking about all these things that we talk about in scaling and delegation and systems and how to be more efficient. And I literally quit that day. I put in my notice and I went all in. And I'd done that many times prior. I'd had over the 20 years, I had gone back to corporate, but I never wanted to go back to corporate. I had to go do it out of force, out of necessity. Now, this really put me in a trajectory of finding that holy grail that was going to keep me out of corporate, doing what I do best and elevating and growing my business. And it took some work, and it took a lot of faith and just going in the trenches. But it's the best decision that I ever made. And it was, sometimes as a business owner, we're going to be faced with those forks in the road, and we've got to make that decision, that swallow that tough jagged pill and say, let's do it, let's go all in. And I tell people now with authority and a lot of wisdom from my experiences, get help, ask for help, and it'll be a lot easier, right? Don't try to do this on your own. The difference between Jimmy 1.0 and Jimmy 2.0 is that when I went back in after I had given this, job up that was paying me very well, was that I needed help in being able to do this right. And I started getting my own advisors and experts in the different areas. And it cost me a lot of money, but it was an investment in myself. It was an investment in building the foundation with the proper blueprint so that I could build on structure, not just on thought, right? Not just on vision and mission, which I had. It was more on how do I get this done right? Because I've been doing this for a while, but I keep going in circles, right? And
Right.
that's not what I wanted. I wanted to start getting off the tarmac and start flying. And many of us will stay on the tarmac and we'll go in circles and we'll rev the engine and we'll see light takings, but then we come back down, right? And we want to kind of build on momentum.
Oh, that's good. Well, one of the things that you mentioned earlier was that kind of that bridge, and you warned about mixing personal and business finances. What do you see as the long term risk, and how do you help founders correct it?
Yeah. So this is a great topic, because when we start talking about finances, when we start talking about all these things, it's so common for everybody to start really doing it the way they've done it forever, right? So if you don't change the habit and start building on new habits, you're gonna just perpetually keep doing the same mistake. And when I start talking to people about building trust, for their businesses, and start having the buckets for their businesses that are going to start building the foundation for the future, it's not about tapping into your reserves. I mean, you might have to do that again at first, but ultimately, if I have to build on a business, I might have to start thinking, what are the different mechanisms involved in structuring this business with the proper needs and the proper channels needed, so I don't have to go back to tapping into my personal reserves.
Yeah.
And that's where I start building, for example, S corporations, right? That I can pay myself a salary so that I don't have to worry about the X's and the O's of my business, and I can still buy a house if I needed to personally, right? Because I've structured myself with a tax advisor to help me keep doing the things. Many business owners will make the mistake of chopping their profits so that they don't show any income so that they don't have to pay taxes.
Right.
It's one of the biggest problems I see, because when they need money, then we ask for their financials are so weak. Even though they had $1 million in sales, they show that everything was written off and only show 20,000 in income for the company. I'm like, how do you want me to sell your company if you're only showing that your company profits 20,000? When in reality, and we do a forensic audit, your company's making 400,000 or 500,000. But because you don't have the proper tax advisor showing you how you can offset the taxes and structure yourself better, you're basically doing it the way everybody's taught. There's a Schedule C, LLC, it's asinine, right? So we
Right.
start talking structure as a very big part of the blueprint, right? Now we take it on to another level. You built your LLC, you have your bank account, you have the ability to obviously produce, and you have expenses, but those have their own set of buckets and where they go properly and how to make it work for you, so that you're not putting the liability on yourself, and so that you also, liability is also when, if I don't show enough income, now I can't buy a house, right? So
Right.
now I got to keep renting, right, or whatever. So you need to start structuring yourself for financial freedom for yourself, for your legacy, which is your kids. Talk about insurance, life insurance, all these other things we talk about in our forum, because a lot of people put those things aside, and they don't even broach the subjects because they
Right.
don't understand how important it is for their business. They just look at it as another expense. And like I said earlier, if you don't invest in yourself, you're always going to look at yourself as another expense. You're just not
Right.
going to do it. And in fact, when times get tough, what's the first thing people do? They start cutting. They start cutting their marketing. They start cutting all these pieces of what makes their business successful, and then they're like, well, we're not getting any more business.
That's right.
So, well, what do you think? Because you just cut some of the biggest factors that contribute to your business. You just cut that out, and that's because lack of planning.
No, without a doubt.
I say it because I say it with authority and a lot of passion, because that was me. Everything I've done, I've had to go through it the hard way, right? I don't want people to have to go through that, because it wreaks havoc on your marriage, it wreaks havoc in your life. It does, and I just turned 50. I am in probably one of the better shapes now in my life, because I was able to give myself the freedom to start working out, to start running, to start taking better care of myself. And being, I was just looking at my numbers for my glucose, my diabetes. I've gone 90 days where it's been level, right? And that's from
Good.
exercise and diet. And I'm just getting started at 50, right? After 25 years of sedentary lifestyle, right? And building businesses and doing things. The reality was I could build all day long, but if I die, then I built nothing.
That's
And we're
right.
all gonna, but if you know what I'm saying, we're all gonna die. But it's like the legacy building, the thinking outside the box, and helping my wife and my kids, and that. What am I really doing if I'm not giving back? And that's why this program that I built for the community, for those that are not at the high level but want to be, right? Why can't we be at the high level? Why do we have to keep going in circles like I did for so long? I said, it doesn't. The buck stops here, and at some point you want to start getting in better shape. You want to start doing. You want to take your travels. You want to do the things you want to do, but you still want to have a business that does well, right? So let's
Yes.
look at all of that, and let's figure it out.
Love that. When I think about, yeah, using personal credit within a business, and I know a lot of founders do that. We work with a lot of founders, and one in particular exited, and very good as exit stock sale. It worked, very very good, and probably 3-4 years goes by, and then he gets a call from a creditor, and it was a bank that he knew pretty well, had a relationship with, back when he had his business, and they're like, your account's past due. And he's like, I don't have an account with you now. It's like, no, it's for this company. And it was the company card that he had used for, years, with that
Wow.
organization. He sold the business, but it was still in his name. They're still using it. And then, 4 years later, defaulted on it, and they're coming knocking on his door. And,
Wow.
it ended okay. I think anytime a situation like that happens, it's, definitely not ideal, but it
Right.
ended up because the deal was papered well and that kind of thing. But yeah, that was a really big deal to think about. Of 4 years after
Mhm.
the fact, somebody come looking for a debt that you thought was passed off to somebody else a long time ago.
Right. Oh yeah, and and that's the thing is everybody is only relying on looking at their, if they even look at their three bureaus, they only look at Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. But there's so many other things to look into that will give you a better picture of what's really going on that many people don't realize, right? So if you ever need a deeper dive into looking at things that could be on your that aren't shown on your credit but are in your records, that's something that we do as well, and being able to uncover what's really going on, right? Because you might have an old UCC1, or you might have an old apartment complex that it doesn't report on your credit bureaus, but it might be reporting on LexisNexis, right?
Correct.
And this is where a lot of people, they just don't know. Like, well, they'll
Right.
go to a bank and all of a sudden, they're like, well, yeah, we ran your paychecks and this came up. I'm like, what? Like, I have three other accounts with Wells Fargo, Chase, or whatever. Nobody said anything. All of a sudden, your bank is telling me this. So
Right.
yeah, there's many other companies that will procure to do deep dives into things, and even in the lending space, right? Like, you've heard of
Yeah. Of
what they
course.
call. So a lot of people don't realize that you might close the door by trying to be trying to outsmart the system, and you'll take out two or three MCA loans, and then you'll go and you'll maybe change your bank account thinking that that's going to solve the problem, right? Well, these companies, they all tie themselves to a reporting system that they can see, right, everybody else's work, so that if I'm going to make a decision on you and I see you're reported to that system, I'm not going to extend you any credit. So
Mm,
you just might be chopping yourself at the legs, not knowing, right? You might get away with it at first, but with technology advancing the way it is, it's making that world smaller in the lending space. And we're
yeah.
starting to see more things that many people don't realize. So that way, when we go and as brokers, we can see what somebody else already did. So they say, have you applied for credit? And they're like, no, I haven't. And we're like, are you sure? Because we could see that you did this, this, and that. Like, what? It's not on my credit.
Right.
It's not on your credit. It's not going to show on your personal credit, but it'll show in other tools and systems that we use to be able to verify. Because think about it this way, we're like the goalies of our net, right? At the banks, at the institutions that give money. And as the middleman, if I'm the broker trying to get you the best deals, and you're not telling me the truth because, hey, I'm just asking a question and you're just basically broaching over it, I'm going to find out. And I'm going to find out because I'm the goalie for the institutions that extend credit to my clients. The better deals I put through the doors that don't default, the more extension of credit they're going to give my company to give others, right? So the relationships that I build over these 20 years are paramount. It's old school. It's like nobody thinks about that. I do, because I see how important it is. A deal that somebody else couldn't get done, I can get done because of the relationship. So when they say, well, because we charge on contingency, which is what's called a success fee,
Okay.
and we don't get paid until you get paid, right? So if we
All about the
basically
outcome.
shut up, right?
Yeah.
And so I depend on those relationships to be able to come through when somebody else basically closes the door and says, sorry, we can't help you. Well, I'm like more thinking, well, let's look at it in a different way. Let's see how we can get it done. And that's where we use these powers of relationships to be able to open those doors, where somebody else might run an automated system and say, nope, the system, denied you. I'm going straight up the ladder and talking to the owners and the CFOs and making sense for this deal to get done. And that's old school. That's old underwriting, right? They don't do that much, anymore. So you still have the ability to transcend in that world. That's huge because that's like your bullet, that last bullet in your holster.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of business owners don't necessarily understand how underwriters think, and just like you're asking the question, be applied for anything. And you've also seen people that kind of run their fundability with well-meaning
Mm,
CPA advice. What's
right.
maybe a common professional mistake that founders need to rethink?
Oh man, this alone could generate a whole nother podcast, in because the reality is we derive so much faith and hope on the professionals in the areas of CPAs and attorneys and different they each all have a subset or a specialization inside, and nobody realizes that. So just because a person is designated with a CPA, designation doesn't necessarily make it. And I'm not taking away from the CPA designation. I think it's important. What I'm trying to get at is if they're giving you advice for some reason, it doesn't seem like something doesn't seem to be clicking, then there's obviously somebody else you need to talk to. And it could be in another area of specialization, right? Segmentation, right? Because you're not getting the proper advice for your situation or problem, right? CPA could be giving you some advice in a certain area, but if I'm trying to structure my business to sell and my CPA is basically cutting everything so that I can get a refund at the end of the year, that's not proper advice and they're not doing something right.
Right.
And it's not their fault. They might not know, right? They might not know. Like a doctor or general practitioner might not know how to do brain surgery. So you wouldn't have your general practitioner working on your brain, right? But we do that as a business all the time. And we treat our business like that. Like, well, my CPA said, well, your CPA is as good as your general doctor when he says you're sick. But if they say, well, how do I fix this? And the general doctor says, well, you need to go see a specialist, right? How come they can tell you that and you accept it? But if I tell you you need to go talk to our tax advisor, right? Or our cost segregation specialist or whatever, you need to listen and do that because I'm seeing it from a whole different light. I've already gone through case studies that are similar to yours, and this is how we best advise, right? In offering the help from a professional, an expert in that field that's going to guide you better.
Oh, that's really good. Well, wrap up with this. If founders listening and maybe cash flow stress or trying to stabilize financially, what's one decision or habit that helped your clients go from overwhelmed to in control?
Let's look at the big picture. Let's see all the pluses and minuses. Let's try to hide anything. Let's because we can't solve a problem if you're not being truthful about everything, right? And if that means, look, here's my books, do what you may, and let me know. Then at least we can start opening this up and start finding solutions. But what I find with a lot of owners is there's indiscretions, right? There's different things that they're ashamed about. They don't want to talk about. They don't want to bring it out, and they hide it in different ways. Look, ma'am, this is not about passing judgment on what you do. You're a gambler, this, that. Mm-mm. It's not about that. It's about putting a solution to what I'm seeing. And the sooner that I can see those true numbers for what they are, the better we're going to be able to structure you to put the solutions in place. And then you're going to start seeing the pluses. This has happened in my company. We've spent so much money in marketing over the years on different trial and errors in trying to find the holy grail of marketing. And let me tell you, it we're still learning, but we're getting better at narrowing the gap in terms of how much money we spend because we're starting to learn from the advisors and the people that were paying good money to give us advice and now starting to see the fruits from it, right? So at first, I think we all go through a lot of pain points in learning, and then we start having that epiphany moment that I had where we start saying, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that,
Right.
and we start putting it into action, right? For anybody out there listening, don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid of the dollar signs because just because something's being quoted at you for X amount, that doesn't we work in fractionals. We work in things that we can control, right? So if today this number looks too big, let's take a fraction and let's work with this fraction and let's see what we can do, because we can get to the bigger number, but if we don't get started, we're never going to get there. We need to start somewhere, and we'll fractionalize it and make it attainable, even if we have to move the goalpost out a little bit for the timeline, right? So it might not be sometimes in the 2 or 3 months that you want, because maybe your finances don't dictate that. But what if I can open up some channels and some pathways to where we can get it done in 6 months? Okay. Now you can kill two birds with one stone, because we're still going to be able to do the things you want to do. We just had to move the goalposts out a little bit and change the course of direction a little bit and pivot. Be open to pivoting, you know?
That's smart. I like that. Definitely being open to pivot and find a way. Where can people learn
Yep.
more about you and find you online?
Yeah, definitely. So online on Google, if you put eye level to high level, you're gonna start seeing all my podcasts. But if you go to my YouTube channel at Rios Business Funding, I have a ton of education podcasts, videos, and on my websites, riosbusinessfunding.com and riosbusinessadvisors.com. Those are the two websites. We have other companies that we own. Nextlevelcredit.net is our credit division, riosfinancialgroup.com. So there's, you put in Jimmy Rios or Rios Funding, you're going to find us. And we're here for you guys. This is nationwide. Set a time, talk to myself or one of my experts. And there is no problem that can't be solved. It's really just a matter of understanding what the problem is and then putting a plan in place to achieve the goal of solving it.
Outstanding. Super valuable today. I think it's going to be helpful for a lot of founders. So, hey, Jimmy, thanks for being on SaaS Fuel. Thanks again, Jimmy, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. You can learn more about Jimmy at riosbusinessadvisors.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. It's at Champion Leadership. Lots of resources over there for you. Thought leaders share. Share this episode with a person who says, we're just polishing now. Like that hasn't been the status for 3 straight months. Everyone who shares this week gets a final version 3C, actually final version of your project that actually ships. And no one is allowed to touch it afterwards. What if the best customer experience is the one that feels effortless? Next up, Rick DeLisi, co-creator of the Customer Effort Score, breaks down how reducing friction, not adding more, drives loyalty and long-term growth. And coming up 1 week from today, why do so many companies struggle to turn AI into real business value? Justin Trombold will be with us, and he shares why most Gen AI strategies fail and what it actually takes to make them work, not just little, but at scale. So I will see you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSFuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.